All right, welcome back everyone to the GTM Engineer Podcast Season 2 from Hype to Operating System. We all know that GTM engineering is here to stay. So again, we're done with evangelism and we're here for some sense making. So today we're talking about something that's fundamentally changing how GTM teams think about, and that's discoverability. And we have nothing but Kevin White, the head of marketing at Scrunch AI. And if you don't know him, he was head of marketing at Common Room, Retool, and Segment. And he's advised companies like Ashby and Deepnote. So the guy has seen the GTM stack evolve across multiple eras. And now he's working on something that, again, feels like the next frontier, or at least for people like myself, especially in the last few months, which is how your brand shows up inside AI answers and LLMs. So not just Google, not traditional SEO, but the actual responses from ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, and other LLMs, which is what is ultimately giving your buyers, the actual advice and actual answers when they ask about your category. So we're talking about GEO, AEO, or, God knows which acronym the industry is hovering around. We'll probably talk about that also. And one of the takes of Kevin that is super sharp that we're going to deep dive into is that bots crawling your site are almost actually your new VIP visitor. So, which means that the playbook for getting found is being rewritten almost in real time and optimizing for machines more than humans, maybe. So we're super amped to have Kevin on the show and deep dive into all of this. Thanks for being here, Kev.
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me. I'm a fan of GTM Engineering School. I'm happy to be part of it and help out here. So I really appreciate it. Let's get into it.
Awesome. So let's start with some sense making. So we know that GTM engineering is not new anymore and is hopefully here to stay. I think we actually know that by now. But in your take, Kevin, being in the trenches, how it's been changing, this new discipline has been changing in the last year or so, especially.
Yeah, I think some of the stuff that I've seen from, when we were, it's hard to even say how old go-to-market engineering is, maybe, 2 years max, maybe a little bit longer than that. And then I know a few people kind of thinking of it as RevOps, but I definitely think it's a really different discipline right now. And I think what we've kind of seen evolve is, the typical kind of signals or enrichment that you would use for go-to-market engineering, using something like a Clearbit or using something like a Clay or using something like a Common Room to get all of the criteria that your sales team would need to make an informed, prioritized decision around which account to reach out to, or, someone coming inbound and they use a Gmail and you want to enrich all that with the firmographic criteria. I feel like that is kind of not the old school way, but just the where kind of this market kind of evolved and started is there's so many things like that you can use for both enrichment and then finding different signals to enrich a lead or an account with to do an informed approach to go to market. I feel like that's kind of where we started, and now where I'm seeing it evolve to, and this is really exciting ground for me too, is that when I get asked what is especially coming from Common Room, everyone's what are the best signals? What signals should I use? And I always like to think, okay, let's reverse engineer this to see what signal would put your buyer in as a they have commercial intent. They're it's a hot signal. It's the right person, right message, right time that you can send them something. So what is that trigger, or what is that sequences of triggers that puts them into a high intent category? And oftentimes that is not something that comes out of the box. It's not a website visit. That's probably a lagging indicator of one of these triggers, but it's something that's more they did this activity within your product, or they did this activity within a GitHub repo, or some law passed and that is really going to impact this person's business. Those are the things that just don't really come out of the box. And so if you can really get to what is I think this is where go-to-market engineering is going to be most effective, is if you can really identify those things and then identify what that trigger is, and then like find that trigger at scale, like that is where you'll have the most outsized like alpha, for lack of a better word, of getting actual meetings and conversions across the line. And some of the things that are really cool that are able to, some of the tools and products and technology that we're seeing that's able to enable that are things like Claude Code, and of course like Clay and Common Room also have some of these functionalities. But I think there's a lot of teams and individuals who can just do this on their own without having to purchase software because of all the AI tools that they have at their fingertips for like $20 a month or something like that. So I've seen a lot of those, like the AI tools and LLMs evolve to a place where they can get pretty sophisticated, where you're like, hey, find me all the real estate companies, houses that are being sold in this area that have like, are going to be impacted by, this real estate law or whatever. And like you can carve out this super niche and reach out to those people with something that is like so compelling that they can't say no to. And like, that is like what AI is really good at going and sussing out. And I think that's like where the evolution of go-to-market engineering is going to be. It's like almost everything tailored to the specific, a really small cohort of people who you're reaching out to.
I love it. So again, the good old signal stacking is getting more and more accessible and cheaper, right? So
And bespoke,
I
would say. Yeah.
And bespoke. Yeah, we're seeing this also with having things like Clay and in ChatGPT or Anthropic, or even like Excel on like Claude Code. MCP is like super easy to access, and you don't need to build these tables and stuff like that right anymore, almost.
Yeah. It's the barrier to entry there is getting a little bit more accessible. I mean, I would always encourage people to, not listen to us or not like watch YouTube videos and just like go try it on your own. And that's like what's going to get you like the experience you need to like, toy with these platforms and like figure it out and like, spend some time there and you'll learn it really quick.
Yeah, big time. And if GTM engineering disappeared tomorrow, what would you miss the most?
What would I miss the most if go-to-market engineering disappeared tomorrow? I mean, I feel like it would just kind of go back to, I really love the like nerdy, sophisticated stuff of like, hey, like we don't know that much about this account, but like there's a lot of information out there. Like we can go find that information and like this really sophisticated, like, we're going to build all these workflows and like go find all that stuff. I get the joy out of actually like building and hypothesizing and running those experiments. So like if it was just like not possible to do that stuff, that would be a huge bummer for me. I do think it would be kind of nice though, in a way where, maybe just go pure back to like brand marketing. This is the way to reach people. It's like Mad Men style, Madison Avenue, like that kind of pure advertising, like David Ogilvy style. Like that's kind of fun too. So I feel like I could work in both worlds, but I certainly like the go-to-market engineering world as I would say it's more favorable. I prefer it a little bit.
If you're a really curious person, you can find out anything now, and that's powerful. And then you could figure out the right time to reach out to people and how to tell your message. And that if that were to go away, we'd all have to buy billboards again. But what failure modes have you seen with go-to-market engineering, or what would you say some people early on maybe expected that you can do with it that it really doesn't solve on its own?
Yeah, I feel like it's maybe more of a emphasis on the software, because the software companies are the ones out there communicating the message to the market of like, you need this. And so a lot of that is, what I mean by that is the software for go-to-market engineering is a lot of like, enrich this contact, like find this signal, like build this workflow, which if you think about like the two parts of the equation of, how you're going to actually like reach someone with an offer that is compelling, you're just finding the audience to reach in that sense, and you're not crafting the right message to them. And so a lot of times like that part of the that workflow goes missing. And so you tee up all these really amazing groups of accounts and target ICP, and then like you hand it over to your outbound team or someone, and they send them a message that just goes like falls completely flat, because that part of like coaching and understanding of like what the message should be is it goes completely missing. Now, I know there's tools like whatever the AI SDR tools and all that kind of stuff you can like feed into. And so that kind of like gets your message, a little bit more like cookie cutter or like acceptable, passable if like a marketing or go-to-market engineering person's writing it and like putting in all the dynamic insertion and all that kind of stuff. But I still think that, especially for like the really like enterprise style accounts, like you almost need to like get all the information up front to a rep and then have them have some autonomy over like what that message should be. And if you're just handing that over to the reps without like training them on like, here's what this means, here's a compelling reason to reach out, here's why this is painful for them, all this kind of stuff, and they just send them like a like milk toast email or LinkedIn message or whatever, like that is not going to convert. And I feel like that is something I saw a lot, especially when I was at Common Room, which is like that part of the handoff was not addressed enough.
And why is that, do you think?
I maybe there's not enough. I mean, I guess there's like the outreaches and artisans and 11x's and whatever over the world. I feel like they would do some of that education of like, here's how to write a solid email. But I think it's probably, to me, I think that I would diagnose it as maybe more like neglect on the importance of an SDR, BDR team. It's like you're hiring these junior people. They, have a smaller OTE. Like they're sometimes viewed as like dispensable, which I think is inaccurate. I think that team has that's on the front lines, that's generating pipeline and generating discovery calls and all this kind of stuff is so critical and important to a business that I think a lot of people overlook it. They're like, oh, I can just have AI go and do this. But really, if you invest in the right people, if you hire the right kind of talent, you hire the right people with the right kind of mentality, and then know how to use these systems to their advantage, like that is like just as important, maybe even more so important than the other side of the equation, which is like teeing up the right audience that has the right signal. And so, I think it's maybe just like that or part of the organization was viewed as like in the predictable revenue kind of model, which is like, we're just going to hire a bunch of people where it's going to be sink or swim. The ones that make it, like we're going to keep and we're going to cut the other ones. And like, this is not a department that we want to invest in. And that's kind of like carried over, unfortunately. But I do think, hopefully the tide shifts a little bit there and people realize that, this is a really important part of the org that's like a critical driver of the business. And like, I certainly see that. We certainly saw that at Common Room, and then also, see that at Scrunch too. And so I think that's kind of like the one thing that I've learned in being in the space is that like invest in those people, hire the right kind of talent, and like you get really, really great outcomes.
And do you see the most successful companies continuing to invest in the SDR team, or say, hey, we're going to automate everything and we're going to cut that team in half?
Yeah, I think the successes that I've seen are almost like you hire the people to do the work, like the Paul Graham quote, like do the things that don't scale first. And so you hire these really smart people that are able to, really understand the audience, come up with a compelling message, and eventually patterns emerge, and you can repeat those patterns over time. And so once you get to that like pattern recognition stage, like that's when you can pull in technology to kind of like do that work. It's like, hey, Claude Code or whatever, products. Once you're shadowing me, I'm doing this over and over again. Like just figure out and go do that work for me. And then that gives them another frontier to go after. And so you're kind of like stacking these different plays on top of each other is what I've seen work. And so oftentimes even like, yeah, you wouldn't hire like an army of that team. You wouldn't hire like, maybe instead of dozens of people, you hire 3 or 4 really, really great ones to start. And then they can kind of like start replicating these plays. But like, it's kind of funny that, once that starts happening, you get the addiction to the pipeline creation and the revenue. And so the efficiencies there. And so it's like, you won't hire more of those people. Like you want to get as much pipeline as possible. And so like, if something's working, it's like, oh, just hire more and more of those people. And so I think that's kind of an analogy for AI in general. It's like, it's going to open up lots and lots of different opportunities that we just don't even know about. And I have seen that with, hiring the right kind of SDRs. It's like, oh, we only need 3 for now, but then, you hire more sales, like you need more pipeline, and then it's like hire and repeat and do the same. So while maybe the ratios from SDR or BDR or go-to-market engineer to a rep have changed, where it's maybe like 1 to 10 or 1 to 5 now instead of 1 to 2 or 3, I still feel like once that engine's going, it's like you want to scale it until as long as you can,
Is there From your experience, maybe especially a common room, were there certain kinds of companies or certain segments that were really able to explore this and have more success with go-to-market engineering? Were there some segments that were more lagging behind? Like, where did you see the pockets of success?
It's hard to say, really. I mean, we worked with a lot of dev tooling companies at Common Room. Like Common Room is like very strong in the dev tooling space because of the how much rich data and signal data is in GitHub repos. And so like, that was a signal rich and like even data rich environment or company that we saw like have a lot of success. I would say that, maybe some of the like the laggards type of companies that are maybe in like manufacturing or, something really niche, like they were behind, but like I don't think they were behind because there's not data there or there's not like go to market engineering to happen there. I think that they just, don't have the, they're not at the forefront of the market. But I think like the ones that do figure that out, there's almost like greenfield, crazy untapped opportunity there to like look. It's crazy how many like APIs are public out there that you wouldn't even like know or think of, or just like data repositories. And so I think that those types of industries that you wouldn't think of as being like, really ripe for go to market engineering are actually ripe. And if I was joining a company like that, I would be like, oh man, I can join this company and like really just crush it. And like none of our competition is even going to figure this out for another like 2 or 3 years. So yeah, I would say it's probably just like the normal crossing the chasm kind of like learning curve, but there's opportunity to cross all industries in my view.
You've mentioned Claude Code a few times, and there is this hype cycle, right? And everyone was talking about Clay, and everyone's talking about N8N. Now everybody's talking about Claude. Is it justified? What have you seen people move away from and pick up Claude Code and build systems internally? And is this actually part of the go-to-market engineer's role? Is this across the company? How do you think you sort of manage this in an organization when everybody's sort of building their own applications?
Yeah, I mean, next month, I'm going to be talking about something different for sure than Claude Code. Like this is just what I've been using right now. So this is like date this episode or whatever. I'm finding it's kind of it's cool to use because it plugs into like different things. Like it plugs into different APIs. You can like load in like spreadsheets and all this kind of stuff. And like while you can do that on some of the other, I was a heavy ChatGPT user too. And I feel like Claude Code is more sophisticated in the sense of like connecting the dots of like all these different things, like your API to your spreadsheet to whatever system, and like coming up with like really interesting like data enrichments, like that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, shout out to I'm sure you guys know Jordan Crawford. He kind of like got me into it, and I've been like tinkering with it ever since. So that's the model or the product or whatever du jour.
Yeah,
something's gonna displace it in a couple weeks, I'm sure.
I'm sure. Would you mind sharing like a specific use case that you've had success with?
Oh, sure. So this is something I worked with Jordan on actually, which is we wanted to so at Scrunch, like we the product we have at Scrunch is we provide AI visibility for brands. So like what are people prompting, and is your brand showing up in those prompts? And so some of the proxies for like what the signals for like if company would be impacted or have pain points around that would be if they have a really strong organic search footprint that is declining, like that traffic is going away, or if they have a big ad spend, they're spending a lot on organic keywords, they probably want to make sure that those paid keywords, they want to make sure that those paid keywords are also being represented in LLM platforms because users are migrating to those to get answers. And so we went through this like whole exercise of using Claude Code to craft a compelling message, go out and ping like these different, I don't know which API it was. It was like, it wasn't SimilarWeb, but it was something that like does that kind of like will find paid search spend for different companies. And we use that as a list to like merge. Here's our target account list. Here's the accounts that seem like they are experiencing the most amount of pain, and then like draw the line somewhere, and then that becomes like our target account list for reaching out with this really strong value proposition. And so that was like a use case that we came up with. And I think the point there though is that you're not bound by creativity. You can just kind of think about like whatever the best possible outcome data sources possible, and then work backwards from there. And then a tool like Claude Code is pretty good at like going out and finding something that'll work. Whether it does that by brute force, by just like crawling a bunch of different pages, or using some API that's out there or something like that. Like the AI platforms are getting sophisticated enough where, you almost don't even need to buy software sometimes to, I mean, I guess that's technically buying software, but it's like a personal use case.
Yeah.
You don't need to buy SaaS software to like get this, really rich signal that's bespoke and niche, and like you're the only one that really cares about it. So, yeah.
And then now I'm curious here. Now, who's going to maintain it going forward?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. Probably not me. No, I mean, I'm hiring. I don't have someone who I'm just gonna like hand this off to. So it's like no one comes to mind. But
No, I asked this question because I found myself creating lots of bespoke apps, vibe coding, Claude Code, and other platforms, and now I have this like whole army of these applications, and now like I feel like I need a team to like, okay, go change this.
yeah, I mean, I do think I forget what the name of the title of this like role would be. It's like AI architect or AI czar or something like that. That is just kind of like overseeing all these things. We actually have we started doing a lot of like vibe coding tools that with Cursor. A guy on my team, his name's Andrew. He's phenomenal. He is building things like a prompt generator. We're building like a site audit tool, all this kind of stuff that actually takes part of our product using the API. It's also taking like prompt workflows and stuff like that, and it's like creating this like really, really compelling tool that is like used as an offer. And so like, who's going to maintain and manage all that stuff? Like, he's the one that's doing that for now. But I think at some point you bring in someone who's just like, hey, here's all the like AI things that people are using. Like, let's wrangle all this stuff together and make sure that we have some redundancy here. So if someone leaves, like it doesn't fall over,
Sounds such like a fun role.
It's super fun. Yeah. I love it. I wish I had more time to do it, to do all that kind of work. I mean, I carve out a few hours here and there, but I feel jealous of these.
It allows you to go like 100 times as fast, but then that just opens up 100 more ideas, and so it never ends.
Yeah, I think my nightmare would be creating an army of content creators, and then like through AI, and then I'd have to just review and edit all of their work. Like that sounds like my nightmare. So, but theoretically, it gives you like a lot more leverage, right? Yeah.
I mean, like just on this, I remember I recently heard Elena Verna on the latest Lenny's podcast, and she was super hyped about having hired a vibe coder just for herself. So there is like a dedicated person at Lovable that just vibe code apps and as part of like their growth endeavors, and and again, would be such like a dream role for like a prosumer builder, like especially like a young folk, like that just wants to get their own hands on dirty. And it could like just be even for like junior talent, like such a significant step change in how you actually ramp up into role, ramp up into a company, and blend different skill set together, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I had the choice between hiring a vibe coder to build really cool tools and someone on the content side of things who's going to write a bunch of like white papers, I'm definitely going to hire the vibe coding person 100 times out of 100. So I think that's kind of like the new way of doing things. And that makes it sound bad. Like I like content is not an important thing. I think content is extremely important, especially to get visibility with the LLM within the AI platforms themselves. But I think as far as like offers go and for demand gen, like the tooling is like much more compelling of an offer of like, you type in your domain and you get like some really cool like, results or something that is surprising you didn't know. Like that is better than downloading some PDF that you're never going to read,
Bring it on.
Yeah, optimizing here for creating unique, valuable offers that are interactive, that are target specific versus sort of, generic content. Yeah, that's what's possible now. Amazing.
They also become really great tools for outbound, actually, for GTM engineering. It's like we're creating some tools where it's like, hey, if you have target accounts, like run all of your target accounts domains through this tool. This will produce like a report card for you of like, how that brand is performing on different AI platforms. It's going to surface gaps, content gaps, citation gaps, websites that are parts of their website that are blocking AI from crawling it, all this kind of stuff. You hand that over to a CMO and the CMO is like, oh, I don't hope no one else above me sees this. Like let my hand this over to the demand gen or SEO or whoever person, and then like task them with fixing it. Like that's a pretty compelling offer to share to get a meeting, right? So I think that like these tools both work for marketing offers and acquisition, but they can also work on the outbound side too.
Yeah, Scrunch
And
AI is a
enablement
should offer a lot of
brands, right?
product snacks.
Like you guys are both talking at the same time. I couldn't get it.
Sorry. No, and I don't know, I think it's like super fascinating how, like these exactly vibe coding specifically is blending all like use cases and outcomes, right? Because like if you think about it, as you said, Kevin, like if you build like a website grader, you can programmatically embed that into outbound campaigns. So a clay table can run a list of accounts through these website grader logic and generate, like mini sites that then get attached to outbound emails as offers, but then they also become programmatic SEO plays because you have, like they index. They become enablement assets because reps can use them in combos. They become brand assets and even exactly again SEO assets or product marketing assets. So like it's fascinating how like these use cases are also like converging with vibe coding.
Yeah. If you can think about it from that like systems level and how it all kind of trickles down or impacts like all different facets of go to market, like that's the best case scenario. But I think, once you get the itch, like once you create something, I found like, oh, this is a cool thing that we created. It'll work here, it'll work here, it'll work in like all these different places. And so like creating is the first part. And then after doing that, like all the other stuff kind of clicks. And I think the like North Star is just like, is this tool that we're creating actually going to be helpful for our core audience, and does it have some sort of like tie-in to our product? And if you like check those two boxes, then essentially like it'll work as an offer across like lots of different things and have lots of different surface area that you can cover with it. And so that's kind of, we did similar stuff at Common Room. We did like a playbook generator. We have a prompt generator at Scrunch. We have this site audit tool. We have something that'll show you how AI is going to crawl your site and like kind of like give AI a task, and it'll show like AI trying to like get through that task on your site. Like these are all things that are like fascinating for the person on the other end who you're trying to sell your product to see. And I think you can surface it in like so many different areas. And so yeah, once you get that kind of like initial kind of like, oh, this is really helpful for the people who are trying to reach, it just kind of like permeates through like all your different ways of thinking. I almost thinking like what tool can I create, or how can this parlay into something else, because you're using like the same kind of like foundations of like data from like one tool to the other too. So yeah, it's interesting how that all works.
Yeah, I've got to start playing with some of this, and I got to put go-to-market engineer school into Scrunch AI, see what happens.
yeah, that's do it.
But first, I got to ask all these acronyms: AEO, GEO, well, obviously SEO, AIO, the LLMO. There's too many of them. I can't even. Well, do you have a favorite? What do you call it?
Yeah, we have kind of been agnostic about it. I mean, whatever the market chooses, and like, hopefully 2 years down the line, we aren't having this discussion, but we just kind of chalk it all up to AI search, which is maybe not so great for our actual AI search results because people are searching for AEO or GEO or something like that. But pretty much anything I've been writing, I say like, this is AI search, and then in parentheses, AEO/GEO. So like, it's my way of writing that in parentheses is just to like kind of chalk up like how silly it is that like we're trying to debate around this like 3-letter acronym that hopefully is not the acronym that gets chosen over time. I don't know.
No, that's funny. It's funny because that's actually what we did, because we have a module that focuses largely on it in the course, and we did the same thing. We called it AI search.
Yeah. Some people have like a philosophy around like they're two different things, and I'm just like, I mean, you might have that philosophy, but but like the broader market wins in the long run. And so like everyone just kind of use it as the same, like a synonymous thing. So like AEO and GR are pretty much interchangeable. It's kind of like demand gen and growth. Even like, yeah, you could argue like demand gen is a different, like more ABM hands-on type of thing, where growth is more like engineering heavy and centric. But like oftentimes the two things are interchanged in job recs or whatever, or title. People are hired and they pretty much do the same stuff. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things, I would say.
What are people getting wrong, or is there a misconception, or there's some bad ideas out there around how to get sort of ranked, or how to get put into the answers in LLMs?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we're still in the like very early stages of everything, and there's not a ton of really verifiable. I mean verifiable by the LM platforms themselves. Of like, this is what we view and incorporate into our algorithm. Like, they're very protective over that. They're not going to share it, and so there are a lot of like heuristics of like, oh, let's do FAQs, let's do chunkable content, let's have fresh content, let's have credible authors on our posts, all this kind of stuff. Like, let's write in the Axios kind of style because that's what AI likes. Like, those are kind of the memes that are going around. But I would take all of anyone's advice with a grain of salt and say, because like, no one actually knows. The people that actually know are people that work at OpenAI and Anthropic and Google, and they're not gonna share it publicly. And so I think we kind of saw this with SEO too. Is like, there was not a really well defined, in the early stages of SEO. There's not like a really well defined, like, this is, backlinks are the best thing and like all this kind of stuff. But Google slowly, kind of opened up the curtain and kind of shared that. And I think that'll happen. Especially now with ChatGPT ads. Actually, it's like they need to show you some sort of volume. Otherwise, like, why would an advertiser pay you? And so I think we're going to see the same kind of evolution where it's like pretty protective now. And we'll start to get more a sense of like, oh, these are actually the things that work. And then also, like, what works now is not going to work in a year. So like, the algorithms change, the platforms will adjust to like what's best for the user. And so what's working now isn't necessarily what's going to be working in a year from now. And so, yeah, I would say, instead of listening to quote unquote experts, it's like, it's been around for like 2 years now, max. Like, there's not really an expert in the space, I would say. But instead of listening to me or others, go out there, create controlled experiments, see if those experiments yield the right kind of results that you're looking for, and learn and do it on your own, versus like listening to what other people say and just taking their word for it. Yeah, and that's what Scrunch is for too. It's like, once you do that, you can like use our platform or whatever to like see if you did get more citations, you did get more mentions, all this kind of stuff. So I like being in the like kind of neutral third party space where it's like, hey, we're just here to help you out, help you measure, help you understand what's going on. We're not going to say like, do this. We're not going to authoritatively say like, do this and you're going to get this exact result. It's like, we're here to help you like learn, measure, and like find out on your own.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. In in some of my little endeavors trying to figure this out, Reddit keeps coming up as a huge.
I have a take on Reddit, which I don't know if. Yeah, I feel like, okay, with Reddit, with YouTube, with Wikipedia, all these citations of like, oh, this is where you need to have your brand mentions in order to show up on LLMs. That is probably the case for a lot of like the volume is going to to like, LLMs are using those credible sources as data points for grabbing answers and retrieving them, returning them back to the users. But I would say that if you think about the prompts that people are putting in there, a lot of the times they're like across the whole entire buyer's journey. And those types of like referential, tell me about like what this thing even is, types of prompts are where those citations for Reddit and Wikipedia or whatever show up. And so you're getting a lot of top of funnel, not super high commercial intent citations or mentions from those sources. But it's arguable that the mentions or the prompts that you want to show up that you care about are actually covered in more like niche publications. And so we find that if you have like lower funnel stage, like comparison, evaluation type of stuff, like these are oftentimes like written articles that are a super, super long tail of content where the LLMs are referencing, versus like something like a Reddit or Wikipedia. And again, I think don't take my word for it. I think the thing is like, go out there, identify the prompts or the set of prompts that you want your brand to show up for, start measuring them, and then understand like what citations the LLMs are using as a reference point to pull back their answers from, and then use that as your guiding light, versus just taking everyone's word for it that like Reddit is the channel that you need to be on. Maybe it is Reddit, maybe it's something else. You just need to like get the data to find out.
And then at Scrunch, who do you typically interface with? I mean, is it VP marketing? Is it the SEO person, a GTM engineer, content engineer?
Yeah, I would say all of the above. Sometimes it's it's oftentimes in the marketing department where we've started, which is like the thing that the marketing department is, recently are tasked with of the moment is like the CEO, the board, someone's like, hey, all of our users are going to this platform to get answers, and we're not showing up in those answers. Like, what are we doing about it? And so the CMO or the head of marketing, or whatever, is like, hey, we need to have a strategy or visibility into this stuff. They might kick it down to an SEO manager or a growth manager or someone who's going to like actually own that. And that tends to be our champion. Sometimes it's on the content and PR side of things even, but oftentimes I would say it's more on like the growth SEO side of things. And it's probably indicative of like the size of the company. So like a large enterprise is probably going to have a specific SEO person who is now tasked with like doing this AI search type of stuff too. But maybe like a smaller, 500 person startup is going to have a growth person. This growth person owns all of that. And so that's the person who we interface with. So it's really just like the person who is, tasked with like, hey, we need to figure this out and we need to have ownership and reporting and a strategy around it, which tends to be growth, SEO, and sometimes content, I would say. Now, another interesting persona that is coming up is on the engineering side of things. So it's like the CTO type level. And that is because AI bots are now crawling your site. And the person who owns the website is often on the engineering side of things, especially with the case if your website is your product, like an e-commerce product. And so the CIO or CTO level person is now faced with, we're getting this different type of traffic. We are used to like blocking or ignoring that kind of traffic. We need to have some sort of like data governance around what these types of bots can crawl, how they interact with our product, all this kind of stuff. And so they are now sometimes tasked with like, okay, we need to figure out how these AI bots are crawling our site. How do we make it so it's safe, secure for us to like open up different types of information to that? But then also, how can we optimize that experience so that we have a better outcome for our business? And so it's kind of interesting time where that is the case, where people are noticing that like AI bots are a super important new visitor to your site because those AI bots are doing work on behalf of a human that's prompting it.
Is there an emerging standard around this in terms of like a parallel to like robots TXT?
Yeah. So a lot of people have published articles around, LLM.txt, and actually like those, at least right now, those LLM.txt files don't do anything other than they're just like a regular web page on your site. So like, yeah, the LLM is going to crawl it, but they're not going to like take it as direction like they would a robots.txt. So maybe it's a good hedge or something to include for the future, but I don't think it's having much noticeable impact than just like any other page would. I think there's a lot of best practices around like, okay, an AI retrieval agent. Retrieval is like someone's searching. It's like a RAG. They're going to go search your website and a bunch of other different websites, and they're going to pull back information to the user as an answer. Those retrieval bots are, they want an experience that is essentially like no JavaScript, no heavy media, not a lot of code. They want to just breeze through all your content super fast, get all the information that they need, and return them back to the user. So the language that they prefer is Markdown and JSON right now. And so if you can optimize your site or include even like a separate version of your site that is serving Markdown and JSON to those AI bots that are crawling it, then you have it's all around like a token economy. So like the more tokens you have on your site, the more JavaScript, whatever, the harder the harder it is for the AI to crawl it and then retrieve stuff. And so the lighter tokens required to crawl your site, the better typically. And so, if you take a heavy JavaScript page and turn it into like a Markdown page, it's going to have an order of magnitude plus lighter amount of tokens. And so arguably the AI is going to crawl more pages and it's going to get more information, and it's going to be more likely for your site to be shown in the answer. So that's kind of like the optimization that we are helping companies out with Scrunch. And it's kind of like a fascinating new world that people haven't really thought about. It's like, oh, I've created my site that's optimized for humans, and now I maybe need to create a site that's optimized for AI. And like, no one's really done that in the right way so far. So it's very emerging market, I would say.
Super interesting.
Awesome. And just like, again, for the non-technical listeners or the less technical ones, can you give us like a more of a definition of these AI bots, what they were doing in the pre-LLM era, why they were blocked, and why they're becoming important? Which kind of like tasks are they actually doing that is worth for us, like rethinking our website architecture in order to welcome them instead of blocking them?
It's a good question. So we group those bots in 3 different categories. And so there's one that is like the traditional Google search index. That would be, your typical, like, it's going to crawl your whole site. It's going to index it. It's going to show up in the search results. Like, that is still a bot that's crawling your site, and it's still important. That's what's going to read robots.txt and like going to, do all the traditional like SEO type of stuff. There is then the next evolution of that became the training bots, which are what the models are trained off of. And so these are kind of like the bots that'll crawl the whole entire internet and then use that as it's a large language model. It's like they're looking for language. So they're crawling all this language, and they are using that to build and train their actual model, like the model that the LLM is using as like a foundational model. Then like the most interesting ones to me are the retrieval bots. And so retrieval bot it's like retrieval augmented generation type of bot, which is I'm going to search for a query. The training data, is maybe old or stale or something. So I, as an AI bot or LLM, I'm going to go fetch the most recent data that's out there. I'm going to run a few different queries and fan out queries from this prompt to get as much information as I think would be accurate based on the intent of what I'm inferring from this prompt. I'm going to go to different websites. I'm going to go to different sources that are public on the internet. I'm going to pull all that data in, and I'm going to serve it back up to the user, and I'm going to do so in milliseconds worth of time. Like those are the types of bots that are going and you're seeing like citations from in the LLMs. They're like finding information and returning it back to the user. They do combine. The answer is combined with that and the training data, but the retrieval bots are the bots where you want to optimize your site for, and also are the bots where you're going to see like crawling different pages on your site and understand like what information they're trying to gather and retrieve and return back to the user. So they're really important to pay attention to right now in this new world of like showing up in LLM models.
Very cool. I think we'll need another episode just on that, Kevin.
Yeah. We have analytics at Scrunch. I'm not to plug Scrunch too much, but we have analytics to like track all these bots on your site. It's really cool to see. For us, I mean, we're an AI company, so we're pretty like outside of the norm, but it's we have more bot traffic now than we have human visits to our site. And so, the switch is starting to happen. I'm sure if you look at your own analytics, or whoever's out there listening to this, if you look at your own analytics, you've probably see something similar where there's like a lot of AI traffic. We have like a real-time feed, and every time I pull up the real-time feed in a demo, it's like, oh, in the last 30 seconds, we had like dozens and dozens of hits from ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Facebook. Like Meta has a bunch of is crawling us too for whatever reason. So yeah, it's kind of fascinating to see how all these bots are consuming your site, and it's something that as marketers you would typically dismiss in the past. We're like, oh, bot traffic, like this is not going to give me any information on like the user experience. But now it's like, oh, I want that bot traffic because there's a person with intent behind that bot. And so it's just kind of a different like shift in thinking that marketers and technical website folk have to understand and adapt to.
And to be clear, like how do you actually track whether that's a bot or is a person? Like you can do that on GA. You need Scrunch.
This gets a little bit outside of my like domain expertise, but there's the visitor has like a in the visit, there's like the head of the visit or whatever, like the tag that's coming through, like will tell you if it's like a retrieval bot. We have a whole article on it, but it's essentially it's like they self-identify as bot traffic, and there's like unique identifiers that you can capture. We use like whether you're using Cloudflare or Akamai or something like that, like they if you have like a CDN integration or Vercel or something like that, it's pretty easy to just like, we'll just do it all automatically for you. But there's unique identifiers where you can just do this on your own.
So they're being pretty transparent in the user agents. They're not trying.
Oh
to
yeah. They're not trying to fake that they're not a bot or anything like that. I mean, they do show up in traditional GA4 and probably like post-hog too. So like, yeah. You can identify it there too.
Zooming out, this is even more fascinating because I think like we're basically witnessing a shift, not just in AI search, but like we're basically optimizing for building for machines versus humans, right? Again, I think like we are at the very beginning of this, but like where even the expectations of our industry, like up and to the right, more content, more pipeline and all of that. Like it's kind of like we're just setting an expectation for every human to perform in a straight up growth trajectory, and which it resembles more of how a machine thinks, right? Like, and rather than a human that is more of like a cycle based type of human. We need, like we have growth peaks, we have rest moments, like we go more in cycles. But I think like especially tech and especially the AI, industry is going more into, like it's expecting everyone to behave by machine, like as machines, right? Like you always need to be doing LinkedIn. You need to be pulled. You need to be doing everything, all channels at all times, more pipeline, and so on and so forth. So I'm seeing this more and more, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this.
Yeah, I mean, I I think of when machines are talking to machines to do a job, I think of like even the next evolution even of where things are going, where it's like, oh, maybe your website is instead of just being optimized fully for with Markdown and all this kind of stuff, you just have it connected to your whole entire like internal documentation and all this kind of stuff that you is a safe you safeguard, but you say like, oh, this is okay for AI to crawl. It's going to give you like pricing information. It's going to give you competitive intel. It's going to give you all this kind of stuff, and then maybe like the interface of AI talking to AI is like not even Markdown. It's not even human language. It's like some other crazy language that AI just prefers to like talk to itself. And so it's like you create like a qualified or whatever kind of like chat bot on your site is like speaking AI for AI. So I don't know. This is like getting a little bit like overly conceptual, but like I think of like things could devolve into that world, and maybe we just like sit back and like give it a job, and like it'll just all go and build and figure stuff out on its own. But until then, we have to use what we have, I guess. There's still humans in the mix right now, at least.
For sure. And if we switch gears and talk about a little bit of like teams and hiring, right? Like we definitely, like with AI, yes, job market is also having, like a crisis or undergoing a crisis. How have you structured or restructured also on the back of your time of common room, like your GTM team or org at Scrunch, and where does kind of like you see GTM engineering sit?
Yeah. I mean, we're still like very early, I would say. We've only I think our team went from 4 people in April to like 50 plus now. So it's like fast growth, but like not a huge team. The way I'm thinking about it is kind of similar to, what we were talking about before of, instead of a one SDR to like 2 or 3 reps ratio, it's probably going to be more like a one GTM engineer growth oriented type of person who's, going to do whatever it takes to get a meeting and use the tools at their disposal, mapped to like, 10 or 5 enterprise reps. So that's like one of the bigger impacts. We have someone who's doing like vibe coding and all that kind of stuff. Maybe I'll carve out like Elena did like a full-time role for doing that. I mean, I would love to have that as a hire, but still like the basics, you still need the basic infrastructure of marketing. I think you still need content. AI content is not great enough yet. And I feel like, if you're creating and publishing content from AI generated content, the models know that like that is going to like devolve into revert to the mean. I guess it's going to be like the snake eating its tail, and so they're not going to reward that content. So I think to me, most of marketing is content writing, ads, emails, blog posts. Everything you do in marketing is writing, and so like having someone with a strong perspective and a copywriter and content writer, and that's like the language that AI goes in. That's what AI goes and crawls and pulls back to the user right now. So I feel like, content is like a very key thing, along with product marketing to support the sales team. So I think a lot of the traditional stuff in marketing still applies. Like I'm still hiring for those pillar-based roles. The thing that I think evolves next, though, is like maybe that team doesn't have to hire as much of a team for themselves. Like they have these AI agents or other people who are, using AI to not have to hire like an army of people within like the products marketing org or the content org. So essentially, like the way I'm building the team is, hire people with really subject matter expertise, like know their domain really well, have a lot of like great IC output, and then they can use AI tools to leverage themselves, and like maybe they won't hire like a huge team. So I don't see our marketing team exploding to like 50 people in the next year. It's probably going to be like the core set of like the core pillars, and then like a few people like maybe that are supporting those pillars, or contractors or whatever, or AI agents supporting those pillars.
Love it.
Yeah, I mean, shall we? Like, I think we're coming to a close of the episode.
Yep,
Okay.
I gotta run to my next meeting. Actually.
All right. Well, we'll wrap this up. This is really awesome, very informative, Kevin. I think Kevin's core point throughout this conversation was that a great go-to-market engineering, it's not just about fancy tools, and it's more about creatively stacking the right signals, triggers, so you can spot real intent. You can show up with something that's relevant, a really strong offer. And I think you also said, Kevin, that the best teams, they really start with a few sharp, curious people who can do a whole bunch of unscalable experiments, and then bake those winnings into something that is into systems that can scale. And then as far as the emerging edge of AI search, companies are designing content and offers in their whole websites for the new way that we're finding information, and that's a space that we all have to learn about. So
Yep.
thank you for sharing all your intel here, Kevin. This is awesome.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks for having me, guys. It's been great.